Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amor de Soi Wellness. And Donovan Jensen is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Happy Talks. My name is Dr. Alice, and this is Donovan. And today we're going to talk about how to stop procrastinating. I know we're all guilty of this to some extent. So, Donovan, what are your thoughts about how can you be more productive and how can you stop the procrastination train? Or like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so I think as with a lot of other topics, the best approach is to just hit it from a bunch of different angles, right? And so when it comes to procrastination, it's a matter of like, okay, do you have a schedule, right? For me, when I have a schedule, I'm much less likely to procrastinate because I know when I'm supposed to do things as opposed to running into this blank time and then being like, okay, what do I want to do next? Well, what I want to do next is this, so I'll work on this, or like, it just is a lot more lackadaisical and a lot less likely to produce the actions that I actually need to do. So that's one piece of it. Another piece of it is, for me, I've done a lot of work around kind of parsing out the difference between my emotional state, or like if I just don't feel like doing something, or if I'm genuinely kind of tired or burnt out in some way. So, you know, there's a gap between like, oh, I don't feel like doing this, so I'm going to do something else instead, even though my energy levels are high and I feel fine and I could do it, I just don't want to, as opposed to, hey, I actually, you know, I don't know, had a really long day working already. I did 2 super hard workouts and I'm just beat and like, I can't think straight. So that's another piece of it, is kind of parsing out when I'm procrastinating because it's just me being guilty a little bit, and when it's actually something I need and more of a recovery period than an actual procrastination period. Those are the 2 things that come top of mind for me. I'd be curious what you have.
Yeah, no, I agree with the whole calendar thing and just mapping out everything, your whole life, not just the things that are related to your work or your appointments, but actually putting everything in your calendar. And then one of the things that I learned out of a leadership training program that I did was, you know, capture your whole life, all areas of your life, whether it's your relationship, your health and well-being, your work commitments, your time with friends or family, like capture it all and put it in your calendar. And, you know, that's the first step. It's one thing to put it in your calendar, of course, but if you find yourself unreliably doing the things that keep getting pushed off, it's like, oh, work out at 9 a.m. every morning, and for some reason you hit the snooze button just decide to sleep in a little bit more, then you really have to look at, okay, clearly there's not a structure in place for me to reliably do this, so maybe I have to get more accountability in place. Like, I need an accountability buddy to tell me to call me at 9 a.m. or 8:30 to get me ready for the workout. And then it's a matter of also looking at when you have something in your calendar and there's the alert and you either do it or you don't. But if you like continuously like move it to the next week and then you're like, oh, well, I can't do that. Then you move it to the next week. And it's just like a repetitive pattern of just pushing it off and pushing it off and pushing it off. But actually committing to getting it done, like you had an appointment with a doctor or your dentist. It's like no, treat everything in your calendar and really focus on like what's important in your life, what's really essential. Like, yeah, there's a lot of random things we could be doing, and if you need time to like look at your social media, then block out the time for that, so you don't spend like 5 hours being like scrolling because I'm like, oh, I have this free time, so now I'm just gonna be in a YouTube black hole. And if you need that for your mental break, that's totally fine. No judgment around that, but like even schedule that out, schedule that out. So it's like clearly in your calendar, like, okay, I get 10 minutes to look at my social media, or 15 minutes or a half hour, whatever that looks like. So then that way, whatever's next in your calendar, you're like, okay, I'm following whatever's in my calendar. My calendar tells me what I need to be doing right now. So as long as you're following along, if you find yourself not consistently, reliably following along with what your calendar is telling you, then you really have to start looking at creating structures on getting you to be reliable.
Yeah, and I think it's really important what you mentioned about actually scheduling in the time to do things that aren't necessarily, like straight line productive or like
Yeah.
ideal or exact, like, oh, I'm going to squeeze as much out of this day as I can. But instead, some other things that like just browsing social media may or may not add value, but seem nice to you,
Yeah.
right? Like actually having those in your schedule, like I just feel like it's so easy to build out your schedule in a way that you haven't actually put those blocks in. And
Mhm.
then what happens is, you hit a certain point where it's like, I don't really feel like doing this. I haven't done anything that I want to do today or anything that I enjoy or anything to relax me. And that's where like procrastination can step in.
Yeah.
Whereas when you have time blocked out,
Yeah.
it shifts the frame a little bit, and it's more like, okay, I know I have to finish this paper or whatever for the next hour.
Yeah.
But then I know I have 15 minutes to just do whatever I want, or a half an hour to watch a show or whatever. And then that way you have kind of something to look forward to as well as something to like lean back on, right? Like once you've done it, then you don't feel like, wow, I've really been kind of restricting myself or not allowing myself to do something fun because I have to do all these productive things. Because if you don't put that space in there, you end up with just kind of a frame that's like a lot more negative and a lot more, oh, like I really deserve an extra break, or I deserve this, or like I really don't feel like doing this. And when your feelings and stuff start coming into play and getting stronger, that's when you end up taking actions that are not aligned with what you would really like to be doing.
Right. Totally. Yeah. And that actually reminds me of another point of just being clear on, giving yourself some space to have that time to just decompress. I think that's really important, and we don't always put that into our schedules, and that is, I think, important for our well-being. But you can also make sure you schedule enough time to complete your task. So if you feel like you're always running short, then clear on like one task you only block out an hour for, but generally it takes you 2 hours for, then you have to like adjust your timing. And that's always something we're refining and honing in on, like, okay, how long will this task take? Maybe it only takes you an hour and a half. So then you get like, an extra half hour to do your social media thing then if you want. But it's like, no, this time is set for this exact task. And really every human being can only do one thing at a time. That's all we can do. That's all we're capable of. So it's just like, instead of thinking about like, I have a bazillion things to do, when I map it out in my calendar, lay it all out, then it's just like, okay, what does my calendar tell me to do? That's what I'm doing right now, essentially.
I think that raises actually another really good point about how procrastination sneaks in, which is when your to-do list is giant and you don't really know where to start.
Yeah.
And you can end up spending a bunch of time trying to figure out, okay, what do I do next? I do this, or should I do this? Or maybe I do this. And when you have more of a structure, even if it's not blocked out, you just have like a priority list. Like then at least like you were saying, I can focus on whatever's at the top of this, I get done, and then I go to the next thing, or if it's in blocks, from here to here, I do this, from here to here, I do this. And then you don't have to spend time in the moment kind of trying to decide, like, should I do this or this? I guess, well, if I start this, and then you've lost another half an hour or an hour trying to decide what it is that you want to do.
Right. Yeah. And then you couldn't decide, so you went on social media, and then then you just like lost another hour. So you're like, well, I don't even know. I need a break from thinking so hard. And when it just mapped out, it makes life so much easier in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So I wanted to circle back a little bit on something that I think is really important for procrastination. And I think it is one of two things. One being getting in touch with your emotions and figuring out ways to recognize that your feelings may or may not reflect something accurate, which is to say that there are many, many tasks that I run into in the day that I don't feel like doing. And I often seem to project like, oh, when I start doing this, it's going to be so hard and so unpleasant and so whatever. And then once I start doing it, like 2 minutes into the task, it's completely fine. Like,
Oh,
it's not nearly as terrible or like straining as I imagined for some reason. And it doesn't seem to ever get better. Like, it doesn't seem like I ever learn, like, oh, this thing that I really don't want to work on is actually not going to be that bad if I just start.
right.
So that's one thing, is kind of like dealing with the emotional state. And the other thing that I've had a lot of success with, and I hear about from a lot of people, is figuring out some sort of system or process to get you from that feeling those emotions or whatever, to actually starting. So I think like one of the most common ones I've heard about is kind of this, like, it's like a certain number. I don't remember what the number is, but like you count to 3 or 5 or something, and you give yourself that much time and then just go right into the task.
Right.
Something like that. It doesn't have to be that specific thing. I think is really important, because I don't know if you've had the same experience, but like I said, if I'm not doing it and I don't start, then it seems like the worst thing ever. And as soon as I get even just a smidge of momentum, it's completely fine. And like, sure, there are tasks here and there that really are rough the whole time, but it's few and far between, and it's way, way less than I ever predict.
No, I really agree with that idea that, we spend a lot of time dreading doing things, and that's like a lot of time, like we're anxious about the thing that we have to get done, and then we dread it, and so we put it off, and that's a reason that contributes to the procrastination. And like you, a good example for me was, I'm in the middle of building this course right now, so every weekend I'm working on building the slides and the PowerPoint presentation, and I don't know, it's just like the starting point, like I have this emotional like resistance to get it started. But once I literally, like you said, 2 minutes, I just have to create like my first few slides, and then I'm like in the zone and I'm in focus mode. Like, this is actually really exciting. Oh my God, I have so much to share. I want to do all these things. And then I have all these ideas, and it just like I get in this flow state. And yeah, sometimes, I don't know, it's just, I think, a part of life to have some resistance to things. And I think that like exploring the emotions is super critical with procrastination, because you have to understand like, where is that resistance coming from? Like, I actually just had a conversation with someone last week that's dealing with a lot of anxiety, and he was telling me that he's a software engineer. He works in tech, and with the beginning of COVID, he was feeling really productive at work and getting stuff done, and he was like more focused because there was then all these distractions around. And then slowly over the months, he became way less productive and less focused. And he would, if there was like an example he gave me was like, if there was a deadline 2 hours from now for a work thing, he would wait until 15 minutes before the deadline to start it, and then he would end up turning it in 30 minutes late. Like, and that was just like this pattern. And I was just like, yeah, that's not a great pattern to have. And, what do you think shifted that? Like, why do you think you do that? And, we were exploring together, and we kind of uncovered that, because people started getting laid off at his work because of COVID, that was stressing him out. And so he was worried about getting laid off, and that kind of helped, or that basically caused him to lose his focus, because he was in so like panic fear mode of losing his job. But it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, because then he's like waiting till the last minute. He's not turning in quality work because it's like a rush job. And it's just like this vicious cycle in a way. And I was just like, wow, I realized that fear, it's like the fear of failure, or the fear of disappointment of someone else, sometimes has us hold off on doing things that are really important to do. And if we could actually unravel that, uncover the source of the fear and work on the fear, and realize that, can you be with yourself however you are and still get things done regardless of the outcomes? Like, there's a lot of emotional work, I think, that needs to get done for some people who have this consistent pattern of procrastination.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to with your emotions, dig into what the emotion is and what's underlying that. Because I could see, like you're saying, fear, or fear of being judged or failing being one thing that leads to procrastination. I could also see actually having too low of an emotional state being a problem, right? Where you have something you need to do, but you haven't really identified a strong reason for why you need to do it, and you're not tied to it super strongly. Something like go in for your routine doctor checkup, like something like that like just gets pushed off indefinitely. And a lot of people wait until they're actually having some sort of like problem to actually show up. I think that's really important. Like, I think there are a couple different angles, and those are just the two that I can think of, but like ways that your emotional state is basically preventing you, or at least like reducing the chance that you're going to take a specific action. And it could be in either direction. It could be strong negative, or it could be, I guess strong positive, you're probably doing something, but it could be like neutral, or just like no emotions around it. So another, it could be finding what you need to actually drive you to get it done.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And that's actually something else I see with a lot of clients and people that I interact with. It's just like in their jobs, they are unfulfilled and they just have no motivation to do the things, because they just are like, why? I don't even like this job. So really, should I give my 100%? Because I don't even care. I don't even care. So what does it matter? And I was actually exploring this with my partner, because he wasn't procrastinating. He was having other concerns, but we were exploring. And I was like, well, you have to come up with like a why, seek something beyond of what you're going to get out of it. Like, what's the company mission? What's the company trying to accomplish? And, can you align yourself with the company's mission? It's like, what is like a bigger picture outside of yourself to motivate? Like, your company is trying to help people do X, Y, and Z. They're trying to make a difference. Actually, I remember now, it wasn't that he was procrastinating. He was complaining about being overworked and sometimes having to work on weekends. And that was his gripe about work. And I was just like, yeah, it's like, this is part of any contract job. Sometimes, you go through phases, and that's not necessarily going to change. So you either find a way to enjoy your work or be miserable. It's like, choose. So it's like, why don't we find a way to enjoy it, the process, whether it's something you don't like. And if you don't completely align, and I know not everyone can just quit their jobs, that's not an easy fix for people, but with your situation that you have currently, how can you find a little more enjoyment in it? And sometimes, seeking reasons outside of yourself, looking at what the company is trying to accomplish, can maybe help you feel more good about what you're doing, or drive you perhaps to do the work, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that's important, to find a frame that you can use. And to, go back to this like procrastination topic.
Yeah.
If you have stuff that you need to do, there has to be a reason that you need to do it. And initially, like, the first thought you have about it might not be the one that gets you motivated. So like, going back to that work example, like maybe the first thing they think of is like, what is this company trying to do? And like, I don't care. Okay, fine. But like, what other angles can you look at? Like, what skills can you learn from this place? What networking can you get done? What, like, you need to go to like this job, you're going to go to it either way. Like, what are the aspects that actually do provide some value? And it might take some, finagling, some brainstorming to actually figure out a way that keeps you motivated. Yeah. But any of these things that we need to get done, or that we procrastinate on, have to have some sort of meaning. And if they truly don't, if there's truly no good reason to do them, then it doesn't matter if you do them, right? Like,
then don't feel guilty about it.
They shouldn't need to be on your list. But, like going back to the doctor's office example, like, if I just think about scheduling it because you're supposed to do it, like, that doesn't hold any water for me. But if I think about the difference between like, oh, if I go and I have like a 1% chance of early detection of something that would ruin my life, like, and then I think about more tangibly, like, okay, what would my life be like if I just got some like disease? Can't think of anything specific off the top of my head, but something that could have easily been prevented and treated if I just went in. And I think about like that life and that, that specific thing, then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, I need to go in. Actually, I think dentistry is way easier for this, right? If I think about having to do like 3 root canals, or just going in, or just like scheduling, like just getting it scheduled, it's like, okay, I would rather just not take the chance of having to do that. And in the same way, like that's the way at least I personally overcome a lot of my procrastination, which is to just find an angle that's a little bit more emotionally compelling. And usually there is, like almost always, if I brainstorm long enough, I can find a much stronger reason than whatever comes to the surface.
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah, and you have to be creative. And I think you actually have to also, as far as going back to the scheduling thing, you have to plan time to plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need planning time. And maybe you can incorporate in that planning time, like creative ways to brainstorm what would motivate and drive you. And you can even put that in your calendar, like in your calendar description, you'd be like, this is my driving force of why I need to do this thing. And then maybe when you come up to that task in your calendar, you're like, oh wait, I really don't want to do this. Oh wait, I need a motivation for why. So I click on the description and be like, oh, this is why I'm doing it. Okay, I remember now, and put all that part in your planning so you're motivated when that task comes up.
Yeah. I think that's such a good technique, right? Is just having that readily present. It's not gonna make you take action every single time.
Yeah.
But if you can find an emotionally compelling reason as opposed to just like a more logical reason, then it pushes back against the main thing that we talked about that kind of gets you procrastinating in the first place, which is some sort of emotional, like either, fear or just not caring or this resistance to like, it's going to be hard, right? Like it gives you an opposite push in the emotional realm towards like, oh, this is important because of this. Like, and I think that's critical. Like I said at the beginning, like I think the best thing to do is just hit it from a ton of different angles.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, and actually kind of going back to the calendar thing, I thought of another thing to be beneficial is like we have these super long to-do lists, and I need to like literally things will sit on my list forever. And if I don't actually put that thing in my calendar, it is not going to happen. So it's just like always updating my to-do list and just putting those tasks, especially the things that keep getting put off, into my calendar so it gets done, and noticing that like if it was something that doesn't seem that important but it should be, like for example, if I should clean my car probably every few months, but I don't. It's getting pretty dirty and I need to clean it, but it just doesn't feel that urgent to me because I'm like, well, I got other things I got to get done, but then therefore it goes like months and months and months without cleaning it, and it could use a pretty good detailing. So actually maybe I should just hire someone to do it versus doing it myself. But anyways, but if I like kept pushing it back in my calendar, then I have to really look. It's just like, it feels kind of bad when I keep putting it off. And if I just like took the hour and just go to a car place to get it done, then I don't have to like stress about how I'm not doing it or feel guilty that I'm not doing it. And that's a way to kind of like get those things that don't seem that important to you, but they are things that need to get done. And yeah, I think and I don't even know what would, I guess I could come up with a motivation because I do like a clean car. It feels good. It feels like you have a new car when you clean your car. Yeah, so that was my tangent. I don't know if I of that.
I think it brings up two kind of important things, and one that I was going to mention anyway, so I'm glad you touched on it. One of them is if you find yourself procrastinating something a lot and you're not projecting it as like, oh, this is going to be horrible, and it won't be, like it's actually something you don't really want to do. If you can offload that responsibility somehow, like how you mentioned, like, hey, maybe I should hire someone. Like if that you can offload it, like definitely do that. Like, that's one of the greatest things I've ever discovered in my life is just being like doing these things that I hate and then realizing that like I can just give someone money to do it. And I know not everyone is in that position, and like it depends on what the thing you don't want to do is. Like if you don't want to work, I don't know if you can give someone money to do your job for you. But there are a lot of things, there are a lot of tasks, especially the things that pile up, that you can just move off of your plate and get someone else to do it, or find a more efficient way to do it. And I guess that's another thing is like a lot of these tasks that get procrastinated are really burdensome in some way or another. That's another like source of procrastination. Like, great, I have to do this, like, I don't know, shoveling, right? Like I have to shovel the whole driveway and like, I don't want to do it because it takes forever. Yeah. Well, like get a snowblower, Like, you know what I mean? There are other options too. Sometimes the solution is to find a more efficient way of getting the thing done so that it's not as painful, so that you don't procrastinate as much. I said I had two things. I don't remember what the second one was, but
Oh, that's a good point that I didn't even realize that yeah, that's what I started to notice in my business is like all these mundane tasks I hate doing and then I keep putting off. And they're important, even though I just hate doing them. I just, yeah, started to outsource it then it finally got done. So instead of, maybe it's not like, and the other thing I had to let go of is just like understanding that it doesn't have to be perfect was the other thing that like, yes, if I outsource it, it might not be exactly how I would have done it, but being okay with that, hey, at least it's getting done versus not getting done, even though it's not perfectly how I would have done it, but you know, it's sufficient enough and I can train and give manuals to the task to be in a way that it gets done. So it's not always perfect, but it's better having something tangible than nothing. Like I have my virtual assistant help me manage my messages because it's so much. I don't have time and it's overwhelming and it's just like I don't even want to get started because there's like hundreds of messages sometimes and I can't. So now I have her go through and like respond to like very common things. And if it just like is something out of the ordinary, then I have her message it to me and then I'll respond to it personally. But that's just like so less overwhelming for me if I get her to handle it, even though it's not always a perfect system sometimes. But it just gives me so much more relief and not so stressed out about having like hundreds and hundreds of messages all the time. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's like a clear shift from this monster behemoth like task.
Yeah.
Like, you know, even if it's not perfect, like it goes from here to like here.
Yeah, it feels good.
And I think that's something that's important to note. And actually a tactic that works for a lot of people is finding a very, 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 very small piece of a task to do it. I know that's a little bit different than what we're talking about, but like breaking down your task into something so small that you know you can do that piece, right? So you don't have as much resistance. So for this example, like if you have all these messages and you set a time or a goal that you said, I'm just going to answer one message. Like that's it. That's all I commit to. I'm going to answer one message. When you break it down to that small of a piece, it's very, very manageable. Like it's pretty damn hard to come up with an excuse to say like, I can't answer one message. Like you can definitely do it. But a lot of times having that minimum like action gets you that momentum, like we talked about earlier, to keep pushing forward. And I personally have found a ton of use in this. Like I've been working on my book for forever. And when I switched to saying I'm gonna write like I used to have a goal of 2 pages every day or something. I switched my goal to 1 sentence a day and ended up writing 2 pages way more often than that was my goal previously. So it doesn't necessarily mean like set your goal super low, but like if you can kind of set 2 parts, right? One is like this is the minimum amount of action that I'm going to take. And it's something that like, because when I thought about 2 pages, I would just be like, oh, God, I don't want to do this. In the same way, like hundreds of messages, I'm sure it's like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And I thought like, okay, the minimum I have to do today, the absolute minimum is 1 sentence. Like there was never really a day when I would be like, I can't write 1 sentence. Like such a cop out. And then once I did that so many times, I would just get up to that 2 pages. So I kind of had like this like double tiered system of goals. And I think, you know, when you're trying to like really optimize and get up there and get as much done as you can, you know, you want those goals. But if you're having a problem about taking action at all and you're just procrastinating on stuff, like you were saying before, 10% is better than 0. 60% is better than 0. Like even if that assistant is not doing it exactly perfect how you want it, that some amount done is better than none of it.
Totally, absolutely, yeah. I like the low investment to just get the ball rolling. That actually works for my slide. If I just create the easy slides first of just like the layout of how this slide, the rest of the presentation will go, then, you know, the rest kind of follows more easily and naturally. And so I just like literally, I even started just create like the templates for the rest of my course and just have like those out in a bookmarked. And so I can just, when I have thoughts, I can go to that presentation and just like type out my slides for that and reference back to it as I need. So it's like, yeah, just the starting is the hardest part for a lot of people. And for me too, it's still like, I don't even know if it's going to ever be easier. Just like starting is just hard. You just have to get over it and just start, even if it's like one thing, one little thing, and that gets you the momentum to keep it going. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's, at least for me, like that's what all of these tactics are. Every single one is to trick my brain or to trick me as a human into just starting to do something, like all of it.
All of it, right? Yes. And then then you can actually accomplish a lot more.
Yeah. And I will say, just to finish fleshing out that previous tactic, there were times where I wrote a sentence and I really just wrote one sentence. That definitely happens sometimes.
Yeah.
But I know, because I have the data from like how much I would get done in general, those were the days that I would do nothing when my goal was 2 pages.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to highlight that, like, it's not a perfect cure-all. It didn't make me like do it perfectly every time, but it still got me to do more than I would have otherwise.
Right. And then you can at least feel, instead of at the end of the day beating yourself up for not getting to your 2 pages, you're like, well, I accomplished one thing. I did write one sentence, and I feel like having a sense of accomplishment versus a sense of like failing at the day is a much better way to end the day than to, and then that feeds into the next day of what you get done, of being like acknowledging what you've accomplished for the day. And it's like, actually, when I started a shift of like acknowledging, oh, some days it feels like I didn't get anything done because I didn't, like, I have this giant to-do list and I didn't accomplish anything. But when I actually like hone in on like, oh, actually I did this and I did this and I did this, it wasn't that I did nothing. I did a lot of things, and maybe it wasn't on track with what I wanted to get done, but I still did some things. And I think that shifts your mind and being like, oh, wow, I actually am getting stuff done. Or instead of feeling like I'm never getting anything done, kind of thing. And another thing actually that just had me think of like setting your day. If there are some tasks, sometimes I just write like, okay, what are the 3 big things that I get? Or even just like one big thing. If 3 is too many, just stick to one. Like, what's the one thing that I really need to get done today? And just get that one thing done. And then it feels good, instead of thinking like, oh my God, I have 20 things. I don't even know how I'm going to get through these 20 things. I might as well just do nothing. Just like, because it's just like impossible. And then you feel overwhelmed and you're like, nope, can't handle it. I need a break. Versus just like one thing helps, again, goes back to like the low investment, can get the ball rolling, kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's a tactic that I've heard work for a lot of people and also works for me. And just having basically one thing per day that if I get done, I'll feel like I got something done,
Yeah.
which is usually like a task that is fairly important or a high priority. Because, going back to what you're saying, like, I've had days where I felt busy the entire day, and then it's over, and I didn't get anything done.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what happened.
Yeah.
And if I go back, like, I did do a bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
but not anything that was like really important to me or that made me feel accomplished for the day. So having just that one thing, or up to 3, more than 3 is generally too many. By having that is really helps focus and give a sense of achievement for the day. And on that same note, we've talked about momentum in a particular task. I also wanted to talk about like momentum within a day, because like if I start my day strong and knock out 2 or 3 things in a row, I have good momentum for the rest of the day.
Totally.
The opposite also applies. If I start my day and I'm just messing around on my phone in bed, and then I go get up and I'm supposed to work out and I play on my computer for another hour and then go do the workout, like the whole momentum for the day is just drained out. And that doesn't mean that like I don't recover from it sometimes, but for the most part, like what I do in the day sets the tone for the rest of the day. So I have found, and I've also heard, if you can get a win early in the day for some sort of accomplishment or some sort of productivity, that can help drive you for the rest of the day. Like a lot of people are really into making their bed first thing in the morning. That personally, like, I don't care about that at all and does nothing for me. It does not make me feel accomplished. But a lot of people that sets the tone for the day because, like, okay, I already got my bed made. So now, I have this next task. I have this. I can tackle this. I can tackle this. So if you can find a way to get a win early in the day, it can set up momentum for the rest of the day. A couple other things that like work for people are like working out first thing in the morning, or like, waking up, having a cup of coffee or whatever, and then working out or a glass of water. I personally like to journal first thing in the morning. That makes me feel accomplished, focused, clear. But yeah, finding a win in the morning can also help set up your day to have less procrastination.
Totally. Yeah, it creates the context of the day and gets your day off started. And I know when I've done that, which I'm not always consistent, like when I have a consistent morning routine of like meditating and exercising, yeah, it totally shifts how productive I feel in the day. It's great. Cool. All right, well, I think we covered this topic pretty thoroughly, unless you have any other thoughts, Donovan.
No, same as I mentioned throughout. Just like it's a topic that there are a lot of potential sources and a lot of ways to work at it, and procrastination is kind of the product of some other thing going on. So it takes a little bit of digging to kind of figure out exactly what's causing it and what solutions are most likely to work.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can check out more content at howtohappy.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you can stay up to date on the videos. We've also got a Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook that you can check out. Reflect, take action, and enjoy life. See you next time.